In the quiet hills of Massachusetts stands an abandoned mansion that locals rarely talk about openly. It isn't because the place is haunted or dangerous, it's because nobody ever truly understood what happened inside its walls. The mansion belonged to the Arledge family, one of the wealthiest families on the East Coast during the late 1800s, known for their land, their money, and their strange habits. But when their estate was opened decades later, people found something that turned the entire town upside down. The mansion had 14 locked rooms, each sealed so tightly it looked like they hadn't been opened in a lifetime. The house had been a source of curiosity for years, but no one dared to go near it. It wasn't until the town decided to restore some of its historic buildings that officials finally stepped inside. Dust floated through the air, like old memories refusing to settle, and the wooden floorboards groaned as though waking up after being asleep for over a century. What they found inside the main hallway was a long stretch of heavy oak doors, one after another, all locked shut. The keys that were discovered in a rusted metal box didn't match any of the locks, and the workers who were there that day described feeling as though someone or something was watching from behind the doors. The Arledge family history wasn't particularly dark, at least not on the surface. They were known for charity work, for hosting elegant parties, and for keeping to themselves. But people often whispered that their eldest daughter, Eleanor Arledge, was different. She rarely attended events, never appeared in public, and her name almost never came up in society pages. Rumor had it that she was either sickly, troubled, or simply uninterested in the world outside her home. But other rumors suggested something else, something darker that nobody wanted to admit out loud. According to letters found years later, Eleanor had a fascination with architecture. She would sketch room layouts and write about secret spaces, hidden doors, and intricate designs. Some believed that many of the mansion's strange features, dead-end hallways, unnecessary staircases, and of course the 14 locked rooms, were created at her request. Yet no one ever confirmed whether Eleanor actually lived long enough to see the mansion finished. Some claimed she died before her 18th birthday. Others said they saw her walking the grounds many years after. When the restoration team couldn't open the locked rooms, they brought in experienced locksmiths. One man named Carter took on the challenge of the first door. It took him nearly 3 hours to crack the lock. As the door creaked open, everyone stepped back expecting dust, old furniture, maybe forgotten belongings. Instead, they found a completely empty room. Not even a single speck of dust seemed out of place. The walls were bare, the floors spotless, and the windows were sealed. It looked as though no one had ever entered the room, not even the builders. The temperature inside was noticeably colder, and one worker insisted he heard faint breathing, though it was dismissed as nerves. The second door was even more difficult to open. This lock seemed newer, almost as if someone had replaced it long after the mansion was abandoned. When Carter finally broke through it, the room behind the door held something unexpected, a simple wooden chair placed in the very center of the room, and nothing else. No dust, no signs of life. Just a chair facing the wall with no explanation. Another worker noticed faint scratch marks around the base of the chair, as though it had been dragged from one spot to another repeatedly. But the strangest part was that the room also appeared completely untouched by time. By the fourth or fifth room, the team felt uneasy. Each room was clean, sealed, and unnervingly empty. It didn't make sense. Why would a wealthy family build 14 rooms and then never use them? Why keep them locked? Why replace the locks over the years if nobody lived there after the early 1900s? Some believed these rooms had a purpose. Others believed they were meant to keep something or someone inside. The sixth room finally revealed something more personal. Inside was a small writing desk with a single sheet of paper placed neatly on top. The ink had faded, but the handwriting was delicate and careful. It looked like the writing of a teenage girl. The message had only 3 words: "I'm still here." The moment the workers saw it, the air in the room seemed to shift. It felt heavier, colder, as though the house itself exhaled. The sheet of paper wasn't yellowed or brittle. It looked freshly written. This wasn't possible. The mansion had been empty for nearly a century. The team brought in historians who began digging deeper into the Arledge family archives. They found journals belonging to the family's matriarch, Margaret Arledge. Most entries were ordinary: household affairs, social events, financial records. But one entry stood out. In it, Margaret mentioned that Eleanor had a condition that made her obsessed with order, silence, and isolation. She wrote that Eleanor insisted on sealing off rooms that didn't meet her standards of structural serenity. Nobody understood what that meant. Some thought she had a form of obsessive disorder long before such terms existed. Yet another journal entry painted a far more chilling picture. Margaret wrote that Eleanor would sometimes disappear into the house for hours and could not be found until she emerged from one of the unused rooms, saying she had been studying the silence. The entry ended with a final line. She says the rooms speak to her. She says she hears them whisper when we sleep. As the historians read this aloud in the mansion, a sudden noise echoed through the hallway, a soft, dragging sound. Everyone froze. The sound seemed to come from the end of the hall, near the last locked door. When they approached it, the noise stopped instantly. The lock looked even stronger than the others, reinforced with iron. It took Carter nearly an entire day to break through it. When the door finally opened, the room inside was completely dark, not empty like the others, just pitch black, even though there was a window. When the restoration workers shined their flashlights inside, they all felt their stomachs drop. The room had writing all over the walls, written in the same delicate handwriting they had seen earlier. The phrases were repetitive, circling the room from floor to ceiling. I must preserve the silence. They must not enter. They disturb the balance. I can still hear them. And repeated dozens of times. Do not open the doors. No one spoke for several minutes. The room felt dense, suffocating. The lights flickered, though nobody could explain why. And then one worker noticed something that had gone unseen at first glance. In the far corner of the room, behind an uneven section of the wall, was a door, smaller than the others, child-sized. It was sealed shut with nails hammered from the outside. The historians decided to leave it closed. There are some secrets, they said, that don't need to be uncovered. But Carter, the locksmith, couldn't sleep that night. Something about the small door bothered him deeply. He said he kept hearing a faint tapping in his head, like someone knocking from behind a wall. The next morning, before the others arrived, he went back to the mansion alone. He pried away the nails one by one, and when he finally opened the small door, he expected maybe a crawl space or another empty chamber. Instead, he found a tiny room barely big enough for one person to sit in. In the center was a bundle of old cloth, shaped almost like someone had been resting there long ago. And on the wall, written in that same delicate handwriting, was one final message. You shouldn't have opened this. Carter didn't return to work after that day. Some said he moved away. Others said he became obsessed, claiming he heard whispers whenever he closed his eyes. But what truly happened remains a mystery because nobody ever saw him again. His truck was found abandoned near the woods, the keys still inside. Today, the Arledge Mansion stands quiet, its locked rooms open but never touched again. The restoration project was abandoned. The town refuses to talk about it. Visitors who approach the mansion say that the air around it feels unnaturally still, as if the house is holding its breath. And if you walk down the long hallway where the 14 doors stand open, you might hear something soft, a whisper, a breath, or the faintest tapping sound coming from the walls. Some believe Eleanor's spirit still roams the mansion, protecting her silent rooms. Others believe the rooms themselves hold something far older than the Arledge family. Nobody knows for sure, but whatever lies behind those doors, whatever demanded the silence Eleanor tried so desperately to preserve, One thing is unmistakably clear. Some rooms were never meant to be opened.